The subject of this seminar has been the issue of individuality, or the issue of human identity, uniqueness of individuals. And underlying our seminar has been the idea of a tribute or an awareness of Rabbi Miller and what he taught us. And I don't think we can really do better than speak out something that he used to teach us, many of us, in this issue of the paradox of individuality. Let me try to develop that as best I can. Also enlarge on something Rabbi Wilson was speaking about this morning along the same lines. The problem really is the search for uniqueness. That means the yichidius, the unique role or unique identity that each individual has to find. The subject is difficult because it is, first of all, rooted in a very high place, and that is the question or the problem of how the world can consist of differentiated entities, fragmented, broken down pieces, and yet be a manifestation of the ultimate oneness. That's the root of this problem. And I hope what we'll be able to study this morning will be the beginning of a way of thinking about the resolution of that paradox, or at least as far as the human mind is able to find a direction in the issue. And the other reason that it's difficult is because there's a preconception that in a spiritual path, or more specifically in a Torah way of life, there's a denial of uniqueness. In other words, the preconception is if you speak to people out there in the secular world and you seek out their prejudices or their preconceptions about the religious pathway, about the person who is subscribing to an observant way of life, you'll probably detect a prejudice that holds that those of us who do that are cloned robotic copies of each other. After all, if you look in the technical specifications of how we live, you'll find a very, very normative, you'll find the Code of Jewish Law, look in Shulchan Aruch, it defines what you do from the moment you open your eyes, including the first consciousness you should have when you open your eyes in the morning, right down to the order in which you put on your shoes, how you tie your shoelaces, in which order you cut your nails, how you handle yourself in the bathroom, which sleeve you put on first, which sock you put on. There's just no room for individuality. I mean, anybody practicing such a system has to be a totally robotic, cloned individual. There's no time for anything else. Yeah. How is it? How does Torah hope to develop a sense of individuality in such a closely normative system of practice? That's a great challenge. Many times the secular mind will accuse a person of spiritual striving of simply being a blinkered, robot who has no challenges because you just follow the ritualistic compulsions of a system. And of course, anyone with any insight knows that the Torah mind, you observe people of Torah greatness, you'll observe people who are doing exactly those things. They tie their shoelaces in the same way. They cut their nails in the same way. And yet they are flamingly individualistic when it comes to their opinions and their attitudes and their minds and their creativity. It's a remarkable thing that needs examination. How is it that a person who is so closely training himself in every aspect of his behavior is achieving such an individuality in terms of his consciousness? That's a remarkable issue. So there's a difficult subject, and there's a lot to explore. Let's see if we can try and find our way through this. There are other problems as well. The problem of how the world manifests as a breakdown of pieces and yet is nothing other than a manifestation of Hashem's oneness that also finds expression in terms of the Jewish people. That means we're supposed to be a cohesive unit. We're supposed to manifest what's called Knesset Yisrael. That means the collective neshama, the collective soul of the Jewish people. That we are one. Am Echad, we are one just like He is one, and yet we have to be individuals. How exactly is that to be, how is that to be achieved? So Miller used to explain Rav Dessler's analysis of the subject under the heading of Diglei Midbar, the question of the Jewish people marching in formation through the desert in tribes, families, and in formation, if you like. Let's see if we can try to explore a little bit of that. And the idea is that there are 3 levels of organization in the world. It's a remarkable subject. In fact, one of the exhilarating aspects of this subject is how Rav Dessler puts together the concept of order in an ordered fashion. Remarkable thing. But let's try and study it. There are 3 levels of what he calls Seder, 3 levels of order in the world. What we're interested in this morning primarily is the 3rd one, because that's where the paradox comes in, and that's where we begin to try to achieve some sense of resolution of this problem of breakdown and multiplicity and oneness. But in order to get there, let's go through the stages. The first level of order he calls Seder L'Shem Seder. That means the intrinsic inherent order in the world. The world is a symmetrical, or in one way or another symmetrical, but at least an ordered and organized place. In fact, in the philosophy of science, they talk about this a lot. The current jargon is the anthropic principle that notices that the world is so incredibly ordered that if you shifted the givens at all, you shifted the constants in physics, the charge on the electron or the mass on the electron, or any of the fundamental constants in physics, if you shifted any of them at all, the world would collapse, implode or explode. How is it that it's poised on such a knife edge of organization? So they come up with the anthropic principle. They have very interesting philosophical gymnastics that are an attempt to explain this in non-spiritual terms. But even the non-spiritual physicists are close to admitting that's a remarkable thing. The world is very, very organized. Our minds are organized along the same pattern. That means we perceive the order of the universe. The whole notion of science, mathematics and science, is a notion of being able to grasp the world in terms of its organization. If the world were chaotic and random, there'd be no such thing as the world. The world wouldn't be the world that we know. But you couldn't apprehend it in terms of science or physics. The whole concept of mathematics is that there's an underlying order. The human mind perceives the order in the world in a remarkable way. Not only do we perceive it, but we resonate with it. That means that when you are experiencing an external order in the world, depending on your internal order, is the determination of how you resonate with that order. Right? For example, Miller used to say, if you're traveling on a train, let's say you put yourself in a rhythmic or a symmetrical framework. You're traveling on a train, and there's a rhythm, right? Clickety-click, clickety-click, clickety-click. There's a pattern. There's a rhythm. How do you relate? How do you respond to that rhythm? Well, the question is, what are you experiencing internally? If you're in inner harmony, let's say you're traveling on a journey to a longed-for destination. So that's a wonderful rhythm. That cadence is the music to your ears, right? And it goes on and on for hours, and you hear music in it, and it's just wonderful. But if you're in inner turmoil, you're going to a dreaded destination, then that noise is, you can't stand that noise. It drives you crazy. And the reason is because what's happening is the inner disharmony is being mocked by the outer harmony. That's what's happening. And it sets up a pain. We feel a need. It's a deep subject, this remarkable subject. We feel a need. We feel a clear resonance when our internal structure mirrors the external structure. If a person comes home from work when he had a perfect day, right, like no doubt all of you always do. You come home at the end of a perfect day, and this man walks into his house and he sees all the chairs arranged around the table. There's one slightly out of line. That a natural human tendency, he walks in and he just puts it perfectly into place. On the other hand, if he's had a chaotic day and everything's gone wrong and he comes home and all the chairs are perfectly in line, he walks over and kicks them all out of line. And it's usually not the furniture that kicks around worst, it's the, those who least deserve it. But that's not the point. The point is that there's a need to seek, right? Rabbi Miller also used to make a remarkable observation here, and I don't think we need to be stubborn about this. I mean, you can accept it if you find it meaningful. You don't have to accept it if you don't want to. I don't claim to be a student of Western culture in any level of depth, but I'll tell you what he